Hey, y'all. Welcome to Questions You Didn't Ask. Did you know that this very spot could be showcasing your business or event? Whether it's an audio ad on our podcast or a visual ad on our new YouTube station, or even both, we've got the space for you. Niasha Fray Consulting is reaching a growing audience of over 1,000 leaders who are passionate about health equity, social justice, and civil rights activism. These are professionals just like you, working across higher education, research, healthcare, nonprofit, government, and even public health sectors. If you're ready to get your message in front of a dedicated and engaged audience, send me an email at Niasha Fray Consulting, LLC at gmail.com. Let's talk about how we can help you connect with the people who need to hear about your services and products that advance health equity and wellness. Don't miss out. Get in the mix and let's make an impact together. Welcome back to Questions You Didn't Ask with me, Niasha Fray, and my guest, Julissa Soto, as we continue the series, Ready or Not, the real talk Black and Latino communities need. Let's pick up where we left off. One thing that's interesting to me is that after the first election, well, I should say after this election, right, 2024 and the 2016 election, a lot of people, Black people in particular, started getting or renewing their passports and started traveling more. Specifically, Black people looking for safer spaces to live where they could be their full selves with less racism, less stress, discrimination, oppression, things of that sort. You know, we're all looking for the Shangri-La, right?
Right.
Many many African American travel influencers recommend places like Mexico and other parts of Central and Latin America as places for us to move or at least vacation for safety and other creature comforts for survival and wellness. So help me and my audience understand what's going on in Mexico and any other parts of Latin America you feel comfortable sharing that has the citizens of those countries moving here. It seems like we're going in opposite directions.
Yeah, I I am this is kind of interesting because I have my retired home by the beach in Rosarito, Mexico, by Tijuana,
Nice.
by the border. It's between San Isidro and San Diego. And all of my neighbors happen to be white or black, but not
Mm,
Mexican. Not Mexican. So it's kind of interesting that when I go visit my country, then I see the white folks and African Americans, in Mexico, and I get super excited. But let's just be real. If you're not in your country, it's always going to exist that discrimination, right? Now it's the
mm,
Mexicans discriminating against the white folks and the blacks. And then when we're here, the same thing happens to us. This is not our
right.
country, right? So we just need to accept and who we are and where we're going, right? But I honestly feel that if you're talking about discrimination against blacks suffer more discrimination in their own country than other countries.
Mm,
Even
mm-hmm,
though it's some type of discrimination between Latinos and black, I feel that still Latinos are less obvious with their
mm-hmm,
racism than the
mm-hmm.
white folks. The only reason I say that is because this is your country and you get
Mm,
discriminated in your own country. So how does people expect not to be discriminated in a country that it's not theirs, right? And this is I'm talking about Julissa Soto, 27 years of experience as an immigrant here in the United States, going back and forth between my country and so forth. But it's interesting that you asked me that because my neighbor happened to be black and she owns 3 condominiums back home
mm-hmm,
and she's living the good life in my country, which I admire her. And
mm-hmm.
I say to her, when I come back home, we're going to be best friends because we're both part of the American system. But it is interesting to me that that they're recommending you, or the influencers are recommending to go to those countries, because even right now, with all the immigration coming to United States, the Venezuelans, it's a
Hmm.
huge fight now between the Mexicans and the Venezuelans, because the Venezuelans are arriving with asylee. They're
Hmm.
arriving legal. And some of us have been waiting here in line for 20, 30 years to be
Hmm.
documented in United States. But the president, our past president, open borders and let everybody come in. And I certainly, I don't want to sound racist against my own community, but
Hmm.
I certainly believe that you need to pay your dues. They're coming here demanding services, demanding A, B, C, and D. And I'm like, hold on, it took me 12 years and something and $30,000 approximately to become a US citizen. And you're coming here legally and asking, not even asking, demanding services, housing, welfare, TANF, cash, food
Hmm.
stamps, and Medicaid. And I'm like, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's interesting to me how we wind up in a situation where those who are marginalized or minoritized are fighting for the scraps, right?
Yes, yes.
And we are constantly trying to figure out, well, what do you have and how did you get it? And, well, it took me, I was oppressed this way. And, we get into these conversations when the bigger issue is sometimes overlooked, which is what we're all striving for is equity, justice, dignity,
Mm-hmm.
respect, human rights, civil rights. And those things are experienced in this country, but not by Black people as a whole, and not by Latinos, whether they're Mexican, Venezuelan, Puerto
Mm-hmm.
Rican, Dominican, Cuban, what have you. Now, we might have a different conversation about Cubans, but they're still.
Hey, remember, the Cubans
Mhm.
were the highest voters now for this new election. So,
Okay.
yeah, we need to have a conversation about the Latinos and the better Latinos, quote unquote.
Right, right, right. So there's levels to everything. And that's one thing
Exactly.
that I learned, especially being a student at an HBCU, a large HBCU, Florida A&M University, is that I learned about the diversity of Black people, different types of Black people, whether you're talking about in this country or in the diaspora. And then it got deeper in terms of my understanding of the diaspora when I moved to New York. And then it got further deep when I actually had the chance to visit different parts of Africa.
Mhm.
So we know that we have similarities and we know that we have differences and we know that there's tension. But the idea is that we're all fighting for these rights and promises that it seems like only white people are benefiting from, and affluent white people, to be precise.
Yes.
So as we're thinking about, how different people are coming here, some people had to wait, other people are making demands and things of that sort. I want you to drill down on that a little bit, because some of us who either work in social services and or receive things like WIC, food stamps, Medicaid, all the other things that you mentioned, I mean, is it safe to share how so many people in line with us are what looks like, and we're confronting our assumptions? They
Yeah.
look like newly immigrated people. How are they also in line with and receiving what looks like the same resources as US citizens? I mean, is it safe to discuss if these are loopholes or if these are legal pathways? I'm not trying to
Yes.
out anybody.
No, 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 no. And you know what? What I love about these interview is that we're being real. Because
Hmm.
whatever you're talking about, whatever I'm talking about, I bet with you there is thousands of people out there, but they don't want to speak like you and I,
Hmm.
because they think that we're gonna get into a fight, we're gonna be confrontational. Oh my God, we're offending each other. No, let's just be real. Let's just be
Yeah.
real. You're an African American woman and I'm a Latina woman. And this conversation should happen all the time, because we're both
Hmm.
have questions, right? And then
Yes.
when we don't ask, we're just assuming. So The people that you see maybe in line getting supplementing nutrition assistance or TANF, they might be the refugees. Like I said to you, the new
Mm,
arrivals, the Venezuelans, they come with a different status, but they're
mm,
not people from other country where we can apply for benefits. And then when we fix our papers, right, we have to have 40 qualifying quarters of work,
mm,
so that's the Mexicans and others. But if
mm-hmm,
you come here as an asylum or refugee, the system changed. That's why you also see
mm,
Africans from Africa applying for
mm-hmm,
benefits, right? And you're like, how in the hell they're applying and they just arrived? How
mm-hmm,
did that happen, right? So it's different status. I came here undocumented, so I never qualified, and I can guarantee you that the majority of Latinos who happen to be Mexican come here undocumented, so we can receive those benefits. And
mm,
of course, that sometimes people think, "Oh my God," they assume, right? They were all Mexicans because we kind of look alike. People say that's rude,
mm,
Julissa, and I said, "No, we do look alike. Most of us were 5 feet." We're 5 feet with there's little people and we all look alike. Like, don't tell me that we don't think about when I see the Asian community, right? I don't know how to
mm.
distinguish who's Chinese, who's Japanese. And then they tell me, look at their eyes. And I'm like, for me, they all look alike. And I'm not
Well,
trying to be offensive.
no, you're not, because this is one of the things that came up when and I'm just going to be very transparent, like I have been the whole conversation.
Yes.
When Janet Jackson came out and tried to say, "Oh, well, they say she's black. I don't know if she's black," talking about Kamala. I
Yes.
know that Kamala's father is from Jamaica, and I know that her mother is from India. But the way that she presents is like a light-skinned black girl from Detroit, even though she grew up in California. A part of my experience, in regard to we all look alike, is that when I went to Africa in particular, and even when
Mm-hmm.
I first moved to East Harlem, I was comforted by the fact that I recognized myself and my family in these African people, or these Afro Latino people, and these Dominican people. I said, y'all
Mm-hmm.
look like us. Like, I can't really
Exactly.
tell until you open your mouth, And so that's when, when we start talking about racism, and folks want to then get into nationalism as it relates in this country, the way that white people see you is they see you're black.
Yep.
You can open your mouth and make a distinction. Oh, well, my father is Jamaican, my mother is Indian, and that's why my texture is this way, and my hair, my complexion is this way, and blah blah. You can explain it, but at the end of the day, when I was growing up, especially in the 80s and the 90s, in the South in North Carolina, you needed to make a distinction. You're either black or you're white.
Yes.
It didn't matter. So when you say we look alike, it's because we have similar ancestry.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so we share very similar features, whether it's height, complexion, hair texture, bone structure, what have you. you know we do in a lot of ways look alike. Now when people take it too far and they're using that as a reason to put you down as a
Mm-hmm.
people, that's something else, and we all know the difference. We know the
Yes.
difference when someone is like, I remember one of my clients when I was a substance abuse counselor, he was a Dominican, and he came to me and he was like, your complexion is so beautiful and you look da 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 da. He was being all, flowery and romantic, like, Latino and Dominican people are. And he was
Yes.
like, but you remind me of one of my aunties. And so that was a point of connection. And even though he was a light-skinned Dominican brother, he saw me and he could connect and relate to me because I reminded him of one of his aunts. Now I'm from, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I've never been to the Dominican Republic, but my ancestors have. So, we go in these lines, we service these people, we go to these community outreach events and what have you, and we see people and we say what might be perceived as a derogatory term, you know, I notice among Black people, they call all Latinos Mexicans, especially if they live in the
Yes.
Southeast.
Oh yeah. I have heard that all the time, and it does not bother me. I just smile because the same thing happens to me when I see the Black community. For me, you're Black,
Hmm.
so and believe it or not, I see a lot of similarities in you guys, and sometimes I get confused too. So I'm like, okay, I see that they look alike too, and and
Hmm.
and somebody might say no, or even my own husband, who happened to be Black, a Black man from Austin, Texas. I said, you look kind of like LeBron James. And he tell me, I don't look nothing like him. I'm like, well, in my eyes, you do. You know, like, and then when he go to
Gotta put
Mexico with
down.
me, yeah, when he
Mhm.
go to Mexico with me, people, people look at him and they're like, does he know LeBron James? And I said, see, what did I say to you? And he's like, and the same thing goes to you guys. You all look alike to me. And
Mhm.
that's okay to say it that way. I don't think we're being racist, and I don't think we're discriminating by saying that we look alike, because we do. And everybody calls Latinos Mexicans. And that's the funny part. You know that,
Right.
for me, is like, well, the Mexicans over there. And I'm like, no, they're Colombians.
Mhm.
And then they're like, oh,
And because those are your people, you can look at them and tell the difference.
yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And just by when they're talking to, I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
goodness. Yes,
Mhm.
we
You know the
speak so
difference.
different. Even in Mexico, in Colorado, the majority of the Mexicans are from the north. I was born in the south.
Mhm.
Even we discriminate against the north and the south among Mexicans. The
Mhm.
north people think that they're more advanced because they're closer to the border, and oh my god, they're more advanced. And then they talk about me, who is from the south. They say that people from the south like me were more close minded
Mm.
because we're south of
And
Mexico,
you're more traditional. I remember you
more
were saying that.
traditional. Hmm.
Mhm.
So
And
even among us, that exists, you know?
if you're enjoying the show as much as we love creating it, consider showing your support by buying us a cup of coffee. Visit buymeacoffee.com/Niasha Fray O. That's buymeacoffee.com/Naisha Fray O. All one word. Each cup is just $5, and every single one helps us continue to produce, develop, and sustain the high quality content you've come to expect from Questions You Didn't Ask. Thank you for your continued support, and let's keep the conversation going. Right. And I remember one thing that you said when we got a chance to meet the first time in person, which was that a lot of people confuse you and think that you're Puerto Rican.
Yes, most of
So
the time. You know why they say that, right? Because let me explain to you why. Because
she's
most of the
gorgeous,
time,
y'all.
thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm pretty. Yes, I'm pretty. No, but I know they don't say it because I'm pretty, my friend. They
Right,
say
right.
it because I speak up and I speak out. And usually Puerto
Mm,
Rican women are super strong and they're outspoken. Mexican women are known by being humble, abused by their
mm,
men, having
mm,
20,000 kids, cleaning and
mm,
cooking. So when they see a woman like me saying, I don't cook, I don't clean, no, 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 and I'm going to speak for my rights, they're like, are you Puerto Rican?
mm,
And I'm like, I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or offensive.
mm,
And even my mother-in-law, who happened to be Black, she
mhm,
even told me, I thought that when she met me, I thought that Mexicans were more humble.
mm,
So these are comments that we made against each other that we must feel like. I was confused when she made that comment, like saying, so that's what you have heard about Mexicans only?
mhm,
And then my husband friends, guess what they say when they know that he's married to a Mexican? I bet she cooks really good.
mm,
And I'm like, I don't know how to cook. And I'm Mexican. I was born and raised in Mexico, you know? So see all
mhm.
the assumptions that we make about people. And now
Yeah.
till we start talking, like this is gonna be a pretty cool podcast because the Blacks and Latinos need to hear this conversation that we're having in here. Because I bet they're going to relate to this.
Right. So now I'm going to get a little deeper. And I know
You've
you
been
can go
you've
there
been
with me.
getting you've been getting a little deeper the whole conversation, mi amiga. So more deeper than that.
I'm going
Okay.
there. So, one reason why that I've observed many African American people feel some resentment towards Latinos, and I must admit, I've struggled with this myself,
Okay.
is that when we look around, we see how rapidly it appears that the Latino community has been able to acquire major assets and influence in the US economy over African American people. What I mean by this is that, particularly in North Carolina, my hometown of Raleigh, within 10 years, Latino immigrants have been able to build banks, shopping centers, and other lucrative companies that African American people have been shut out of by the white power structures in America and in North Carolina specifically. So many Latinos look at their progress and it kind of reinforces their prejudice against African American people as being lazy or not being go getters or not being
Mhm.
smart or what have you. And so many of them, in fact, do not hire African American people. And as we're looking towards, health equity and all of that includes economic justice, how do we address this privilege imparted to Latinos over African American people?
You know that it's interesting that you say that. Now that you're talking about that, yeah, and us the Latinos, we look at the Asians. Look how fast they built, and they built just by doing nails most of the
Mhm.
time. You know, so we have to think about cheap labor, right? Mexicans, or I'm gonna say Latinos, because it's including everyone, right? So I'm
Mhm.
gonna be inclusive. Latinos are willing to work for less than African Americans. And Latinos, like I haven't had a day off in 4 weeks, Sunday through Sunday
Mm.
through Sunday through Sunday. So somehow we have a different type of work ethic, if you want to call it
Mm.
that way. And of course, the white folks love that, because at the end of the day, what they're paying me is pennies. Because look at all the hours I'm giving to the
Mm.
white folks, right?
Mhm.
African American, the blacks are not willing to do that. If they don't get paid extra for those extra hours, they're not gonna go for it. They're not thinking, maybe, you know what, I'm gonna bust my ass right here for a year or two, like we think, and then we're gonna build something, right?
Mhm.
No, they don't think that way. They're thinking we're being discriminated. This is not fair. This is inequity. And I totally get, because you guys, your rights are being violated. My rights are being violated too, but we're willing to take it, because in our
Mm.
minds, this is not our country. So in our minds, a lot of us are like, we're gonna make the money. We're gonna do businesses in here, but we might go back. Some of us think that way.
Mm.
And some of us think, yeah, we're going to continue with this, because then we're going to build businesses, that we can build more businesses, right? But working Sunday through Sunday.
Mhm.
And that's something that the African American community are not willing to do. They're more focused on that discrimination, unfair pay, and and they're just not willing to do what we, the immigrants, the refugees, and all of us are willing to do, right? So
Yeah.
that, at the end of the day, like you say, the white folks are winning no matter what. But we see it this way.
Mm.
But we see it this way, my friend. The affluent white folks are winning. And that's what they're thinking. They're winning with us. And in our mind is like, you're going to win for a little bit. And then when we're ready, we're going to build our own, and we don't need you anymore. Or we're going to go back home with the money we make here.
Mhm.
You know, that's
Mhm.
their mentality. So we're going to work for you Sunday through Sunday through Sunday. 60, 70, 80 hours for the same
Mhm.
pay.
Mhm.
Now you tell me, you as an African American woman, somebody comes to you and me, they offer us $40 for 80 hours, and you will be like, no, that's pennies. And I will be like, okay, I'll take it. So they'll come with me. you know?
That's true. That's true. So this is where history and context and cultural context comes into play because, I cannot argue with anything that you said at all.
Hmm.
What I can do is say that our people were brought here forcefully
Yeah.
and enslaved, where we work for free, were terrorized, traumatized for centuries in this country. So when we say no more, it is to honor our ancestors who fought and bled and died brutally for us to be able to stand up with respect and dignity in this country. So our motivation comes from a totally different place. Not that
Yes.
anyone is right or wrong. It's just that it comes from a totally different place, that we have become a people in this country who has tried our best to fight to make this country better and not continue to siphon and extract resources from us. We are still fighting for our fair share. It's
Yes.
crazy to know that when African people who were enslaved, whose families were destroyed and ripped apart, who were treated like animals and livestock, who were bred like cattle, when it came time to end that institutionalized slavery, at least on paper, the American government gave the white slave owners reparations for their profits lost, and they gave us nothing. So when Latino people come here because of a variety of different reasons, including being refugees from violent places, and seeing this as an alternative and making the sacrifices that they make to get here, they are not aware of that history. They just see opportunity. Similar to Asians,
Yes.
Koreans, all the rest. They just see opportunity. And then they also see and hear the stereotypes about Black people. Oh, they're lazy. They just don't want to work. They always complain. They always using the race card, right? That's
Right.
what white people tell them. That's what white people tell you all. But they don't tell you why.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I have been learning, your history as I go. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
arrived here, for me, you were an American. When I started seeing Black is when I came
Mm-hmm.
to United States. Because when I was in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
Black or white, you are an American to me. You were not a
Mm-hmm.
Black person.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got here and I started learning that you are Black and then American instead of American first,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started to. Now I'm aware of everything you're saying, but and I honor that, but I can never replicate the struggle. You know what I mean? We all
No,
have our different
no.
struggles. Yeah. So I'm happy that you're talking about this because we're educating communities, and that's true. We don't know. We don't know all that history. When a
Mm-hmm.
Native American approached me and say that they were raped and that they were all this, and I'm like, my friend, I am ignorant. Please
Mm-hmm.
educate me on your history.
Mm-hmm.
We're all trying here to survive and thrive
Mm-hmm.
together. So it's learning history, and I totally get what you say. That you're like, no, I'm not taking 80 hours a week for the same pay. Am I going back to slavery or what? Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Or
I totally get
sharecropping
where
or
you
any of
come
that
from.
stuff.
Yeah, and I totally get where you come from, but we don't see it that way because we
Mm-hmm.
we didn't go through that.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean?
I do. And I do appreciate, we've said this all through the conversation. I appreciate one, I knew that you would be the person to talk to, right? I
Yeah.
appreciate us being able to share this honestly and openly. And I think I also appreciate, I don't want anybody else to go through. I think most Black people don't want anybody else to go through what we went through. That is
No.
not what we're about. I think one of the things that hurts us is that people who come here who are not white, we're not talking about the French people or the white Canadians or, the white Australians or anybody else. We're talking about non-white people who come here, that they unfortunately are ignorant. They don't know. That's what I mean by ignorant.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yes.
put down. They don't know our history to understand that our struggle, our fight, that tenacity to say we're not doing this for less, we're going to call you out on your racism, we're going to stand up and fight. Those fights is what made it possible for people to come here and make a way. Because before that, it was all for white people and they didn't mind putting that up everywhere all the time. But what white people do, and I mean this especially in terms of the way that our institutions and our structures are set up, is that when people come here, even for African people who immigrate here, they make sure that the narrative is for everyone to look down on us. Why? Because if we truly have solidarity and people truly see our struggle and identify with our struggle and understand what we're fighting for, and how if we all work together for the unified goal, it will displace them. It will shake this power structure to its core.
Yes.
It will require white people to have to give something up, give up some power, give up some privilege, give up some prosperity to share, to be collective. And so they must put us down and make us look bad so that other people won't listen to us. And so
Amen to
that other
that.
people won't identify with us. And so that other people won't walk alongside us. And that is why I think, in my opinion, in my experience, in my professional expertise, that Black people oftentimes, African American people oftentimes feel resentment towards non-white immigrants in particular. We see white people as white people. If you come from Great Britain or, Ireland or whatever, until you prove yourself otherwise as an accomplice, an ally, or something, of relevance to our struggle,
Uh-huh.
we see you the same.
Yes.
Because we know you have the same history. Your ancestors came here and raped and pillaged and, enslaved people just like everybody else. Or you did it in your own community, like in Australia, you did the same thing to the indigenous people there. So we already know who you are. So that's kind of just my take on that. Now, as we wrap up, and this is such a rich and beautiful conversation, I'm always so happy to talk with you, Julissa. And I just want to say thank you so much for bringing all of yourself to this conversation and always being consistent and a powerful, powerful advocate and doer. She's not just a talker, she is a doer. My last question to you is, what would you say to someone who feels like their voice doesn't matter?
What would I say to that someone? Well, I would say 27 years ago, I thought that my voice was never going to matter till I start speaking up. And then I started speaking out and I noticed that someone was noticing me. No, it was not overnight. It's going to take you years and years. And whoever wants to speak up and have a voice out there, just know that you're going to get 500 no's before you get one yes. And the people are going to help you doubt your own ideas, your own way of thinking. They're going to challenge it every day because when you're different and you think different, they might try to shut that voice. So please don't get discouraged. If you have new ideas, if you think that you're smart, and if you think that you can be loud, and if you think that you have something for us, please speak out. Please speak up too. Please reach out to me. I would love to know your ideas because your voice to me matters and I don't care who you are. So whoever is listening to this podcast and think that don't have a voice and that their voice don't matter, here you're talking to somebody who was undocumented, crossed the border in the trunk of a car, was abused, attempt to kill herself. 27 years later, I'm one of the Office of the Health Equity Commissioner. I am your commissioner in the state of Colorado, so my voice did matter.
Yes, yes, indeed. And what a wonderful testimony to come out on the other side and still be fighting the good fight. Thank you so much, Julissa.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast. And to everyone out there, please follow me on LinkedIn, Julissa Soto. Thank you very much.